Miami Heat are basically just the best television show in America right now. And Mike, I don't know how we're supposed to start this, given what.
Let's go.
Let's go.
That's
Let's
right.
go Knicks.
What? No,
Can we
there's
start with that?
no, there's time for that.
Penalty box?
Yeah, David, get out of here. 2 minutes.
Bye-bye.
2 minutes. No, we can't start with Let's Go Knicks. This is a local hour. And even though typically Thursdays are reserved for the David Sampson Show, so nothing personal, please follow him on Twitter at David P. Sampson. Not after that performance. Not after a historic upset over the number 1 seed Milwaukee Bucks. We'll get to Knicks Heat later. 2 minutes.
Get out.
Dos minutos.
But show everyone what you're wearing on the way out, because it is quite a funny little fit.
It's not funny at all. My boy
Are
fresh,
those-
man. My boy stay fresh. Look at him. Yes, sir.
But that's not a
Suit coat.
pickpocket-proof blazer.
He's got shorts. He's got flip-flops. I love it.
The unholy alliance of Tony, Juju,
All
and
the way
David
down.
Unexpected. Unexpected.
Very good. 2
Weird
minutes.
and
You
it's
need
getting
that
weird.
bag
Hell
that
outta
LeBron
here.
had at the
The
press
amigos.
conference.
They know where their free tickets are buttered. Let's put it that way.
I haven't gotten a free ticket yet.
Yeah.
I just ride with
Yeah.
ride with my boy. I just ride with my boy. That's it.
You guys moved into a new studio across the street from the Heat Arena. And free tickets should absolutely be in someone's future here. You guys getting to witness what is happening here. Like the best story in the NBA playoffs. Jimmy Butler is making like Air Bud shots now.
I mean, he did push off, but he also got held.
He's basically just sinking in tip-ins with his nose. Like what the
I'm running out of ways to describe him before I start going to like what is really going on there. Let's start. I'm not telling you what to think. I'm just asking you if you'd like to.
We kind of did a little bit of the Jimmy Butler PEDs conversation yesterday.
He's vascular. Vascular.
He's super veiny.
That's all I'll say. He hit that shot on the way down. Do you know the core strength that you have to get that shot off? He's one of the strongest players on the court.
He caught the ball in midair with 2 hands, fell to the right, pushed it in with 1. I mean,
While pushing a fairly like a big man in every other world, Pat Connaughton.
Yes.
But not in the
Yes.
world of the NBA. But shoving him to the ground. Kudos to the officials for not calling that. It was definitely a foul because they didn't call the hold on Drew Holiday slightly before that. It was. He got away with one, but your mouth is left agape at not just the physical feat. In a vacuum, if that one isolated moment happens, it's one of the crazier buzzer beaters. And also totally unnecessary. There were 2.5 seconds. That was like a 5/10 of the game clock left type of draw play. But they go for the tip in at the cup, and he gets it in, and you do that with a perspective of what he's done this series, and you look around to who he's surrounded by on the court. Pablo, when Kyle Lowry fouled out, when Bam Adebayo fouled out, when Kevin Love fouled out, Jimmy Butler had to close the number 1 seed, Milwaukee Bucks, the best defense in the league, with everyone's pick of best player in the world on the court, having another good game. He had to close them out, overcoming a 16-point deficit, and he did so surrounded by Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Cody Zeller, Haywood Highsmith. What was happening? What is this? How you could point to injuries with Milwaukee. There was no Victor Oladipo. There was no Tyler Hero. You didn't notice. It was the Jimmy Butler show.
Mike, and I appreciate the patience of Jeremy Taché and Parakeet Cortez for not tackling Mike.
Parakeet was getting your coffee, though, to be fair.
I needed some cafecito.
Culture. Why is Mike talking so much?
I will capitulate, but just know that cocky Heat fan was born on the foundation that shows like ours laid. All right?
Cocky Heat fan.
You were all inspired. You used my taglines against me.
You're right.
All right. So,
Mike is pointing
I
to
was
his
just a
groin.
child.
Yeah.
Mike is pointing to his groin and telling them that you came from here.
You cannot hit me with my own catchphrases that I
You?
invented. Yeah. It was long before your time because you were very young, but 2010 was a moment in time.
Cocky Heat fan should be feeling so goddamn good today.
We are. We are. Tony.
For the love of God.
Tony.
So good today.
Oh, boy.
We feel great.
This is one of the single greatest feelings that has ever existed for Heat fandom. To specifically Oh, Tony, get your hand off my shoulder.
I just feel him, man. I'm excited for
Tony
us.
just gave him like the WWF tag team chest pound. Like, tell him, Hawk.
Don't touch me,
Tony
Ryan.
is like-
I swear to God, do not touch me. I swear to God, do not touch me.
I appreciate it, Parakeet.
Tony is Mitt Romney. He's just going to support whoever the candidate is.
I
And
want
right
people
now,
to win. I love winning.
Sounds right.
Jimmy Butler is that candidate.
This is not only back-to-back epic performances from the best player in the series, it's back-to-back epic performances from the best player in the NBA playoffs. Jimmy Butler is doing things at this point that the Miami Heat have never seen, and they have one of the two greatest players of all time in their franchise history. They have one of the 3 or 4, you could argue 2, greatest shooting guards of all time in their franchise history, and Jimmy Butler is now doing things that we have never seen before. It's so unprecedented that people are sitting here with some pretty wild takes about where Jimmy stands within Heat franchise history, including myself, which we can get to.
I mean, Jeremy is saying phrases like the best player in this series, and no one is objecting anymore. The Giannis appreciators are nodding because Jimmy Butler is a mythological creature at this point.
For this week. Are we talking about, when you say he's the best player in the series, are you talking about career or currently?
Currently.
The series.
So in the series, that's not a crazy take. Of course Jimmy Butler's the best player in the series. Giannis missed 3 games of it. I thought you were saying that Jimmy Butler now, with what he's doing, is one of the greatest Heat players. So you're having him overtake Wade and LeBron and Shaq.
I have a fun question.
And Ray Allen.
I have a fun question. Go back to the Big 3 era. Look at what Jimmy Butler has done for these last 4 years. Take Jimmy Butler's performance in the last 4 years, insert him for LeBron James. Do the Heat win less championships? Do they win more championships? Because that guy's not losing to J.J. Barea.
Wow.
Whoa.
He's right.
But just before you do that, just before you get too fast, put LeBron James rings in the box and put Jimmy Butler's rings in the box.
Yeah.
Shake him up.
Minus about 4 of them guys.
Bro,
Yeah.
he had Cody Zeller on the floor last night. Like
Can
LeBron
I-
James
can I-
had
can I-
Caleb
Chris
Martin.
Bosh.
Can I
Thank
read
goodness.
Amin El Hassan's contribution? I was texting with Amin late last night while watching this game, and Amin says that Cody Zeller looks like the substitute high school teacher who was brought on as a ringer for the teachers in the teachers versus students game.
Is that because he's balding?
Largely.
Isn't
And,
that
he-
a
and he's,
whole-
and he's wearing church shoes.
The all-black shoes are terrible. It's a terrible look.
Yeah, Amin also texted some of my other group chats that Jimmy Butler is the greatest player in Heat franchise history. And that is very prisoner of the moment. You almost have to be when you're watching Jimmy Butler.
Prison is, I say this again, the prison right now is so fun.
Yeah.
Like, Mike,
It's incredible.
how does he, they always say about public figures, right? I'm not going to remember what they said. I'm going to remember how they made me feel.
Yeah. Well, I still
Jimmy
remember
Butler.
how Dwayne Wade made me feel in 2006, and what happened with Tim Donaghy does make you view that in a slightly different light. But Wade turned a loss into a win, and he did it by himself too. He didn't do it with Cody Zeller, Haywood Highsmith, and Gabe Vincent. He did it with Shaq and Alonzo Mourning, who was probably
Old
the
Gary
best center.
Payton.
Yeah, he did it with Udonis Haslem. But
How did LeBron make you feel?
LeBron made me feel like he was the best player on the planet.
Ever,
And,
but not
yeah,
just that day.
No,
that you were witnessing.
Yeah.
Well, to me, when I'm watching LeBron as a Heat fan, I feel like I'm watching the number 1 player or number 2 player ever, not of that moment.
But there have
that
been,
makes it better.
But there have now been a series, an NBA final series against the Lakers, the Eastern Conference Finals last year against the Celtics, this series, and several other isolated incidents in which I come away saying that is just about the best basketball I've ever seen. The performances are stacking up. Historically, it's irrefutable that he's like first team All-NBA, All-Playoff contributor.
And I think the key context is they're an 8th seed. He's an underdog. I feel like that flavors this in ways that Wade and LeBron did not enjoy.
The way that Jimmy Butler has done this is by being an elite scorer. That's not what he was supposed to be. He was here to be a two-way player who was supposed to help grow some of these other players. In half the games, not even half the games, he has more 40-plus point performances in a Miami Heat uniform than Dwayne Wade ever had, than LeBron James ever had. He is individually putting himself in that category. Nobody is saying necessarily that he is, for sure, a better basketball player than either of them are for their entire careers. But in this stretch of 4 years in a Heat uniform, his peak performance has been akin to what we saw in the peaks of those players. And no, LeBron James, like for full seasons, was doing stuff that's unprecedented. The best LeBron James was here in Miami, and we all know that. But Jimmy Butler is doing things that's making me sit here and think, could they have won more if this version of Jimmy Butler had been there instead of LeBron? Because what he is doing is simply unmatched. It is truly historic.
Jeremy, the 40-point thing is kind of a sleight of hand trick, though, because when you have Jimmy by himself with absolutely nobody carrying a team,
but they're
versus
winning
when
the
you
games.
have LeBron, Andy Wade, and Chris Bosh, and
It's
all
not.
those guys
No,
together.
because
It's not sleight of hand because no one does it at the
But
clip
I think
that Jimmy has.
the
Right.
fact
40-point
that
games,
he
there's
has
one
no
ball.
the fact that he has no help and therefore needs to do everything, right? The fact that they are an underdog, the fact that he isn't anywhere close to this good in the regular season, unlike LeBron, unlike D Wade, this is the legend. The myth requires all of these ingredients. It requires him to need to do everything, to more than that, want to do everything, and it requires him to be so much obviously worse until it comes to the playoffs. That's the myth.
If you start composing a dream list of grails of sports footage you wish you had, the Patriots secretly recording the Rams Super Bowl practice, what did that look like? Only Jay Glazer knows the answer.
Which one?
The Jimmy Butler Timberwolves practice is something that we've all wanted to see. And I think for an entire series, we saw it.
How long does the myth last? If you lose in the next round or you don't make it to the conference finals, are you good now, Jeremy, that he is done in your mind? He doesn't have to do anything else to be where he is in Heat lore?
What would he have to prove?
So done. So losing, being swept by the Knicks or 4-1 in the second round, you look back at this
that's not going to
season-
happen, David. Don't be unrealistic.
No, I'm just asking your view of it is simple, that you're good to go. Done. Not another 40-point game, not another series win, not another game win. He's your guy.
I think it's clear that it's not just this series, right? It's going back to 2020, and we talk about the way he made us feel. That was something that in a time where we needed it, Jimmy Butler stepped up and was the greatest player in the world. He's done it again and again and again and again right now.
Bring it home, Jeremy.
It also looked like the Milwaukee Bucks were just trapped in one of those dreams where everything is slippery. They just kept falling down, turning the ball over. The Heat were in everything, and they just kept on throwing it away. And so, too, went their season. And so after the game, we got Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is just one of the most likable people, I think, just on the planet, David. High Q rating with that guy. Favorability polls are high.
Able to communicate in a second language in a way that is incredibly rare. Able to explain his
Unbelievably.
feelings, by the way, in a second language. Let's not underestimate how difficult that can be for players or anybody.
Empathetic, smart, now experienced, and saying this.
I just asked Bud the exact same question, but I'm curious for you. Do you view this season as a failure?
Oh my God. Okay, because I'm not that up. You asked me the same question last year, Eric. Okay, do you get a promotion every year on your job? No, right? So every year you work is a failure. Yes or no? No. Every year you work towards something, towards a goal, right? Which is to get a promotion, to be able to take care of your family, to be able, I don't know, provide the house for them or take care of your parents. You work towards a goal. It's not a failure. It's steps to success, you know. And if you've never, I don't want to make it personal. So there's always steps to it, you know. Michael Jordan played 15 years, won 6 championships. The other 9 years was a failure? That's what you're telling me? No, I'm asking you a question. Yes or no? Okay, exactly. So why you asking me that question? It's a wrong question. There's no failure in sports. You know, there's good days, bad days. Some days you are able to be successful, some days you're not. Some days it's your turn, some days it's not your turn. And that's what sports is about. You don't always win. Some other people's going to win. And this year, somebody else is going to win. Simple as that. We're going to come back next year, try to be better, try to build good habits, try to play better, not have a 10-day stretch with playing bad basketball, and hopefully we can win a championship. So 50 years from 1971 to 2021 that we didn't win a championship, it was 50 years of failures? No, it was not. It was steps to it, and we were able to win one. Hopefully we can win another one. Sorry that I didn't want to make it personal, because you asked me the same question last year, and last year I was in the right mind space to answer the question back, but I remember it.
I love these bits of press conference theater when it's post-game and it's raw and he has to figure out what is my message to my audience and who is my audience, David. And Giannis, for the record, 38-20 as the Bucks lost by 2, losing the series 4-1. And I'm watching you watch that, and I just know that your wiring is processing that pretty differently.
Well, it is a failure. So I'll start just at the end, which when you don't win a title from 71 to 11, it is 50 years of failure. Michael Jordan, if you asked him, would say that he had 9 years of failure. Giannis was prepared for this question. He did a great job. So I want to separate the answer from the man. His answer was problematic to me as an executive or me as a fan. His answer and the way he did it, I have great respect for. Giannis, to say that, is to try to, and we would do this to players, right? You say, listen, we're going to be asked the following questions. We want to come off as successful so we can go into the next selling season. This was a great building block. We won 81 games. Is that a success? No, that's a failure, but we don't want to admit it. What Giannis did here, it's not the rawness that got to me. It's him lying to us. He doesn't believe what he said. He doesn't go home today and say, wow, that was a good series.
Yeah, Pablo, you called it raw. And that sounded, by his own admission, premeditated and calculated for over a year.
The rawness is from his quest to convince himself that this is true. You talk about who he's lying to. I believe Giannis is like any of us being put in a position where they're asked to reflect on something that went horribly and spin it into something positive. That is the rawness. The rawness is, oh, this is a professional athlete trying to relate to a reporter, to a normal person, such that they can both reach a place of contentment about something that went so disastrously. Maybe rawness is not the best word, but it is.
It's all you got.
It is human. And that to me reads as raw, even if it feels premeditated.
I feel like if this question were about anything but the outcome of a sporting event, I agree 1,000% because there is gray area in life and you can spin positives out of negatives, et cetera, whatever. But in sports, there is literally a winner and a loser. It is binary. And
literally,
that is how we calculate failure. The one thing I did disagree with, obviously, is there's no failing in sports or whatever that line is. Like, yeah, there is. Like, failing is losing. That is.
Yes.
And as a fan, you can look at the bright side. Like, the NFL draft is tonight. Every fan after the NFL season of 31 teams will look to the positives of like, oh, what, like tonight our team will get better. Like that's how you spin it to yourself as a fan. But when you're a player on a team, like you win or you lose. Like you win the Super Bowl, you're winning. Everyone else has failed.
So, I'm sorry, I was just going to tell you that when there is a meeting after a World Series and the first owners meeting, you give a applause to the one owner who won the World Series. There's 29 men in that room who are failures and who know that they're failures. They feel like failures, and that's because they did not win the World Series. That is the same thing in the basketball room as well.
But what Giannis is saying is the product of him reckoning with like his own voyage through mental health. And I'm not saying here that voyage needs to David's already sighing.
Because it gives you an excuse. You say mental health now, and that means it's okay what he said.
No. But my point is this. The mental health aspect of this does not insulate him from criticism. I actually agree with Jess. I agree with you. Of course there's failure in sports. Of course there is. Of course there is. Sports is deliberately clear about this, and there are rewards for that clarity. You get paid all of this money. That's what the money is for. You sign up for this job. It's a public job. It's not supposed to be easy. Mental health is not a reason to be insulated from criticism. What it is, though, is an excuse to realize that what Giannis is trying to do is turn his job, which is the sports crazy extreme failure or success binary thing, into something that he can manage in a way that we can relate to. And what he's doing is saying, when asked, hey, was this a car crash? He's saying, no, it's not. And everybody else is feeling like they were in the car. They suffered it. So why can't he suffer it? He must suffer it because he gets paid to suffer it, and he's trying to avoid that because he's driving himself crazy caring about it so much.
Yeah, they don't. So the players, he'll leave that press conference. They'll go home. The game was in Milwaukee. Go home. He'll go travel. He'll start his summer, and they won't think about it. So
Who's
when
they?
The players.
You think Giannis isn't going to be bothered by this?
I have watched it happen. I've watched players. I've spoken to players off season. I have firsthand knowledge of this. The impact, not just Marlins players, and not just baseball players. I'm talking about the way players react to losing is way different than the way fans react to losing.
I think that is on some level true. I think that is nowhere nearly as categorically true as you just framed it. I think people suffer this stuff.
I think that's exactly my sentiment is what you just said. But I think that message necessarily, it wasn't for us. I think that message was for his brothers around the league who fail every year. His brothers around the league who play for the Wizards. His brothers who play for the Blazers, who get criticized on TV by us saying that they can't win the big one. They can't do this. And so we categorize mental health and we make it important when we want to make it important. But we don't see them going home talking to his son about, don't worry about him calling you Westbrook. They don't know what it means. So this is not, I don't think this is for us. This is for his brotherhood and say, hey, you did a good job this season, no matter what the haters say. Keep going, keep pushing.
I agree. It's a type of messaging that I'd want someone for maybe my daughter's soccer team. But the reality is he's not the Wizards. He's the best player in the world. And he said a couple of universal truths there that I think everybody seized on. Yeah, sports means I don't win all the time. But also, contextually, I don't necessarily buy it. And why are you making poor Eric Name answer for Michael Jordan? He wasn't prepared for that. He didn't spend a year preparing for that question because he didn't answer the way Michael Jordan would have.
So I believe, by the way, that sports should be incredibly hard. It should be a thing you suffer through. It should be a test of your emotional resilience. If you can't handle it, if you can't handle the idea that this was a failure, this is not a job for you.
It's an historic failure.
4 is the number.
Yeah.
4 number ones have lost to number 8s.
And contextually, if you apply injuries to it and their record, this is arguably the biggest failure. They lost to a play-in team.
It should be humiliating. What we're watching is the coping mechanism. And we can make fun of it, and we should, and I'm not going to begrudge that. I'm just telling you that it also reads as so fundamentally human.
I don't think it's a. Oh,
I just think they lost to a play-in team after the first segment we did in the local hour. Like we need to just.
Oh, it's
reflect
a
on
semantics.
That. Oh, Jimmy Butler's the best player in the world. He's the best player in Heat history. But it's just a play-in team, so it's a massive failure for
correct.
Giannis to lose to them. Okay, come on. Really?
It's a semantics
you guys
thing.
see what you're doing?
that's a Heat thing.
Yeah, but
that's a Jeremy thing. They're not a play-in team. They would have been the 7 or 8 seed.
But it's also kind of using Giannis's own logic against him. Yeah.
Jess had the better. Giannis should have hired Jess as his defense attorney.
Did you guys see that guy? That's the greatest player ever.
Jimmy Butler. He was tapping in shots with his forehead.
You guys follow Parakeet Cortez on Twitter? He's the best player in the world.
We can't beat him.
Nobody picked us. How could we?
It was foretold in the stars.
He's better than LeBron.
He should have asked Eric Name, who will be joining us later in this show, do you think all the times Jimmy Butler hasn't won the championship, he categorizes that as a failure? Instead of using Michael Jordan, because that's who he faced. Michael Jordan reincarnated.
It's just very funny, David, that we want to impose on these athletes. And I get it, and we should. I agree with this. I'm co-signing it. We want to impose failure if you don't win the title, let alone choke against an 8 seed.
It's usually the case for the number 1 overall seed, man.
And we should. But at the same time, we would never want that imposed in
I
our
know,
own
but
lives.
he also went 1 for 10 in the fourth quarter in overtime, and he passed out of these situations. Like he missed 14 free throws. He was
7 turnovers.
an essential part of the failure.
Why is Mike talking so much?
These games are also so late.
I found out the Heat won like an hour and a half ago.
How do you expect me to fall asleep after that?
I passed out with my contacts in. That's why on the youtube.com/LeBatard and Friends feed, you can watch me wear glasses because my eyeballs, they've given up.
You look a bit disheveled.
I'm not doing the best.
I'm not gonna lie. When you walked in, I turned to Kirsten and I was like, "Yeah, we definitely need hair and makeup in here." Your hair was sticking out in different directions this morning.
My T-zone is real shiny.
Is it a sweatshirt issue? Like, if you wear a blazer, by definition, do you feel like someone's more put together and more awake?
Are you asking this because you're wearing a blazer?
No, I'm actually asking because is it based on dress, or are you looking?
It
only
was the
neck
hair.
Up?
It was the hair.
But his
the
hair's always
uncombed
that
hair.
way.
No,
That's-
it was
yes.
particularly mussed this morning.
David Sampson does look like my actual defense attorney in this studio, like we're in court right now.
Your hair's always the same, actually.
I'll take that as a compliment, even though you did not mean it as such.
I meant it as just a manner of actuality.
So, speaking of what people look like in states of dishevelment, Mike Budenholzer does look like he has just been woken up on his couch at 3 a.m.
He looks like a Looney Tune that had a cannon shoot off in his face.
He kind of looks like Tom Wamsgans in front of the Senate committee.
He's not even a top 5 bad-looking coach. Jeff Van Gundy will always be the #1 worst-looking coach in terms of dishevelment.
Like a shrunken down to size version of that scary ghost that occupied the subway in Ghost.
Mike Woodson with no eyebrows would like a word.
Yeah. If anyone should feel like they resemble a failure and actually failed, I would, again, Giannis at 38. Like, Budenholzer feels like he's about to get fired.
Did he forget about the concept of timeouts? Just like the general notion of it. I'm a Heat fan, and I'm screaming at my TV. Yes, contrary to popular belief, I'm still a Heat fan. I'm rooting for the Heat, even though I thought this season was a waste and I thought they should have tanked for Wembanyama. But I was screaming at my TV, call a timeout. What are you doing?
So was I. It was baffling.
Do you know why coaches sometimes choose not to? The players, they don't want the blow at that point. So sometimes I ask this too because I've always wondered when you call timeouts why it is that we see it and the coach doesn't do it. And very often it's the players there's a signal given where the players actually don't want the timeout. Much like with the Bucks, Giannis had a signal in the game we were at. And we were talking about this, or I was talking to Juju about it, that Giannis needed a timeout. And he actually went to the bench and said, we're taking a timeout.
Is the strategy don't let Jimmy Butler get a rest? Is that why they're not calling timeout? This is 2 games that they've given up double-digit leads entering the fourth quarter. Games that should have been salted away. And through their own failure, be it at the line or failure to call a timeout, it's not all on Giannis, even though Giannis had you mentioned he had a triple-double in the previous game. He had 38 and 20 this game. There's a reason why everyone's pointing at him saying that this is a failure because he's got gifts and a skill set that we've never, ever seen. But at the same time, he did fail spectacularly down the stretch. And I do want to take the opportunity to credit Bam, who I was riding pretty hard because Bam was miserable for 3 quarters in that game. And Spoelstra, this is the difference in Mike Budenholzer and Eric Spoelstra. And we saw it in that sweep that the Bucks had where they mentioned the call map and said that this wasn't the bubble anymore, which has already come back to bite them in the ass. We saw that the lone adjustment that Budenholzer made in that series was let Bam shoot. Let's see if he can figure it out. And they've been riding with that largely throughout this series, and Bam hasn't been shooting well. But what Spoelstra did in that fourth quarter to get what was, up until that point, a miserable Bam performance yet again. And I know that there's news out there that he's been battling through a hamstring, in fairness to him.
Hamstring.
But Bam was initiating the offense, and he got their defense all out of sorts. And Brook and Giannis didn't have an answer for Bam initiating the offense, and he dropped such perfect passes.
He was so good. Oh, the heat. Jeremy, Bam had heat on his fastball. The way he was throwing these passes, defense on Giannis. That to me is the headline. He shut down Giannis.
I think, well, there's a lot of it, too, that Giannis, it's the presence, and you can see how Giannis affects shots by people not even taking them. And you can maybe say the same thing for Bam, who's undersized at his position. But for whatever reason, these last 2 games, the greatest, most unstoppable force at driving to the cup has passed out of those situations. And I think it's in large part due to his own lack of confidence in his ability to make free throws. I think that's the biggest part in all of this, and that's the biggest failure. And we see a player that needs to very clearly make adjustments to his game and improvements to his game to become 100% unstoppable. And you can also credit Bam, because Bam historically has been a guy that gives him a little bit more trouble. But I do think there's a lot of Giannis's own self-doubt there.
I think that definitely matters, and he wasn't driving at the same rate late in the game. You could see the confidence lacking. You could see once he was missing shots in that game. I mean, he finished 1 for 10 in the fourth quarter in overtime. He simply wasn't effective, and that's in large part due to Bam Adebayo's defense. And what is crazy is that he hit a couple of jumpers and started to gain that confidence early in the fourth quarter. Mind you, in a time where he was struggling in a pretty major way. He clearly is laboring out there, whether you want to talk about the hamstring or anything else, because he was carrying the team on his back during the regular season while Jimmy Butler was mentally and physically preparing for the postseason. And Bam's what got them there. And to see him late in that game, turn into a point guard, making passes that, like you said, with heat on his fastball, I mean, into tight windows where he was setting Jimmy Butler up for success. And to watch him do that in a series where he was just having trouble holding on to the basketball for large points of it, like not grabbing rebounds, not being able to pass, not being able to dribble the way he always has. It was clutch. It was clutch.
20, 10, and 10 for Bam, and Giannis was, 1 of 9 at the end there in the lane.
He started affecting the game in ways that when you don't have the jump shot going, you want to see, okay, be the second best player. And
Aggressive.
he was. And credit to him. I was listening to most of that game. I got to see from the third quarter on, but I listened to a large chunk of that game on the Heat audio experience with our friend Jason Jackson, and that was a delight because Jax was pretty hard on Bam for 3 quarters. And then Bam had that fourth quarter. And I heard when Bam started turning it on and getting to the cup, there was one point that J-Jack said, "Where are all those Bam doubters now?" Without any sense of irony. And it was the full Bam experience. But he finally tapped into other aspects of his game that pulled through. And this segment started with us mentioning Budenholzer. And we'd be remiss not to mention Eric Spoelstra doing this with 6 drafted players, with injuries to Tyler Hero, who you could have argued would have been number 2 headed into this series in terms of getting you buckets. He's had to find a way, and he pulled off a historic upset with Jimmy Butler. And yes, all the credit nationally will go to Jimmy Butler, but Spoelstra's pretty damn impressive too, because he put Budenholzer in a body bag.
Do you listen to the audio once you're watching the video? You just said you listened to him.
I got my timing wrong a little bit there, but there was a point in the third quarter where Bam started getting fouled and started inflating his point total by getting to the line a little bit, where he started getting aspects of his game back, where he became recognizable, because for 2.5 quarters he was largely unrecognizable again.
Because that's a level of excitement for an audio group that you find only in baseball. And I was wondering if you had a love for Jackson that would cause you to listen to him. Because in baseball, people listen to the radio and watch the game.
No, Jax's audio experience is very disorienting, super exciting. He's a showman, but often I don't know what's going on. And I'm just counting
That's
on
his only job.
Yeah, I'm just counting on the crowd to kind of tell me. But he adds so much flavor and excitement to it that I enjoy it.
You also remember not what he said, but how he made you feel.
You're so into feelings, Pablo.
Yeah.
Someone has to be around here. Cortez, by the way, speaking of feelings, Parakeet.
Oh, finally.
The one, I mean, by the way, so Mike Schur, Cortez, has a couple of messages. Number 1, Heat in 5, you cowards. That is a text
That's right.
he just sent me. Also, weak cachet voice and parentheticals. Let's go. That's a second message. And also, third message, quote, I resign from Meadowlark Media effective immediately.
Oh, no.
I like
He
Mike
knows what's
Schur
coming.
more than I ever have this last week. Like, he's been more honest than ever. I finally am ready to admit some of his shows are kind of funny. They're not all like Rutherford Falls.
Oh, you like The Office now?
Yeah, it's not that bad. I'll give it a watch here and there.
God
There's
damn.
a couple things we got to get to. Mike said a lot of gas baggy words, but the lead that I heard was he didn't watch the game. He didn't care enough to like seek this game out. He didn't believe Jimmy Butler was going to win. He's a coward. I don't want to hear from him. David Sampson, you owe me an apology. I'd like to hear it. Go ahead.
I will not apologize, and here's why. Because what led me to say what I said still holds true. Jimmy Butler had some good games. They beat the Bucks 4-1. The 8 seed beat the 1 seed. The season's not a success until they win a ring with Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler is not a winning player till he wins a ring. That's my view of it.
Just say sorry, man.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Ryan, too. And I wish I could have watched both games. I did my best in fleeting moments and with audio. I had some friends in town at AEW, so luckily they had TVs there, and I was able to follow it. And it's also 2023. We have phones. But
how's your tummy?
My tummy's getting better, but I was really excited in watching my Florida Panthers, and this is a very brief moment that we get to acknowledge them in extending the series. The Boston Bruins have 14 losses when you count the regular and postseason, and 4 of those have been to the Florida Panthers. And Matthew Tkachuk has gotten in the argument, the discussion of greatest American hockey player. I want to play some sound courtesy of the Florida Panthers, where Matthew Tkachuk guarantees that they'll be back for Game 7.
They come back, we keep going. Bobby, way to bail me out. This guy's been doing it, all year, especially right now. Boys, remember this room. We'll be back here for 7.
Matthew Tkachuk I love him so much. He's kind of similar to Jimmy Butler in ways, and he's an agitator. And I do want to take a moment to acknowledge him and his performance, because he was the guy that got it done. If you would have told me that they would have won 2 out of 3 in Boston and still found themselves down 3-2, I would have told you they must have a better home ice advantage in Sunrise, and that actually rings true.
The post-game no-shirt sweaty hug is a thing that happens in clubhouses more than I ever had dreamt would happen, and it is one area where I am willing to forego my issues. I've done...
Yeah, how are you in these settings?
It's very bizarre. So you change your view. I just watched that hug on that video, right? It was a very sort of post-game, hey, we're here. And we're talking about the Heat. And, Jeremy, I don't know where you are on the Panthers, but just for the record, if the Panthers beat the Bruins, that, to me, is the story of South Florida, way more so than the Heat beating the Bucks.
Bigger upset, because the Heat have Jimmy Butler, so everybody knows they're the best team in the world.
Wait a minute, David. When you say that you're willing to compromise your standards about human interaction and flesh-to-flesh contact,
well,
what does
I
that
have
really
a shirt
mean?
On. It's not flesh-to-flesh. I've always been dressed. When I've hugged players without shirts, I've been dressed.
So you're the guy at the pool wearing a shirt?
No, this is in a clubhouse post-game.
Metaphorically, though, you're the guy at the pool wearing a shirt.
Absolutely not. I don't wear shirts. But I don't hug sweaty men after a game at the pool.
Your loss.